My talk is, as per the title suggests, structured data, successful dates. Just start with a general welcome and thanks to the organisers for keeping us busy and gainfully entertained and learning in these lockdown times. And thanks to William and Ben for putting this on, and the sponsors, Redgate. I'll just start with a quick about me so that you understand why I'm giving a talk on the fusion of Microsoft Power BI and Tinder dating, and how this has all come about. My name is Ned. I'm 32. In case anyone in London wants to set the correct age range on their Tinder app to find me on dating apps. I'm a data analyst working in financial services in London. I've been doing this job for the past 5 or 6 years, mainly working on the Microsoft stack of technologies. That's kind of Excel, SQL Server, and Power BI. Also some Python as well, and little bits of web development. I also run a data blog on all things, on anything associated with data. So I've done Power BI, the death or not, or kind of like life support status of Excel, VBA, media reporting of coronavirus and statistical robustness there. But it's very much inspired by thoughts that come into me in my shower that morning. And what this talk is about is going to be a kind of a sandwich of Power BI development and dashboarding tricks, with particularly with app source custom visuals. That is the filling, and the kind of two bits of bread of the sandwich are going to be how I got into data analysis as a career and as a hobby in my mid-20s through a personal project, and how that project still keeps me learning new skills on Power BI and SQL and a bit of Python that I can apply commercially even now. And the hobby project that I'm alluding to is how I actually built out my mobile dating app usage and London-based dating history from 2014 to 2018 into a SQL database that I could run analysis and ultimately a Power BI dashboard from. So I suppose why did I do this? Why did I build a relational MySQL database of dating app usage history? And to set the scene, I might introduce myself with a bit more kind of a candor and self-deprecation than you got with the factual introduction in slide 2, and also alongside my own introduction, a revolutionary phone app that transformed dating in 2013. So a bit more of about me. I'd say I'm a kind of data guy through and through. I'm a bit of an anorak, someone who has kind of like some interests. One of my burning interests is I'm fascinated by the history of the London Underground. That's just one of 3 historical tube maps that I have in my house framed. Personality-wise and looks-wise, I bear an uncanny resemblance to the Steve Coogan character Alan Partridge. For anyone that's not an Alan Partridge fan joining from different territories, just think of the embarrassing uncle you see at weddings, birthdays, and other celebrations once a year who tells, I'm Alan Partridge, who tells terrible jokes, but makes up for this with memorable drunk photos. And if you are from different territory, just bear in mind that Alan Partridge is on the left and me on the right, not the other way around. So what I'm trying to get at with all this very roundabout way is that my unique kind of charms have always been an acquired taste among the ladies. So it was no surprise at all to me when in 2013 and 14, my friends and family and work colleagues suggested to me that I download the new at the time dating app Tinder to improve my chances. And at the time, in that time, Tinder was, I think, it's become fairly commonplace and ubiquitous now. And I must feel like the majority of single people have use some form of dating app. Tinder, I mean, offshoots have spurned since then. Bumble, Hinge happened. There's lots of different dating apps with different quirks, but Tinder was really the first of its kind, and it really changed the face of online dating quite a lot. It brought a lot more people into doing it because it made it a much quicker process. Conventional dating websites which existed before Tinder were, say, Match.com, Plenty of Fish, and eHarmony, to name a few, OkCupid. What they invite you to make a very detailed profile of yourself and ask very pointed questions of you, and they invite you to, and they were paid for predominantly. They ask you detailed questions about what you look for in a partner, and even give you psychometric and formal tests about your relationship needs. Tinder completely went on a different model to that. It was very immediate. It was accessible from your phone app, generatable by your lead photos in your Facebook profile, and the indication of attraction or disinterest that you give wouldn't be the relationship test or kind of like a forensic measure of compatibility. It was simply swipe left, swipe right for yes, swipe left for no. So very immediate, very quick to use. Uptake on it was very it really did rapidly grow its user base and transform dating within a year, possibly less. From it using it was very you would swipe left, swipe right a lot, and generate a lot of people matches, and they'd be stored within your Tinder app, like a kind of like almost like a log history. And it was and so from 2013 to 2016, I kind of like used it and dated like I'd never dated before, and it became kind of like, it was very exhilarating to kind of like fill up a log history of Tinder matches. And basically all of it, as I was doing this and getting into Tinder dating, it was that was dovetailing with a career change that I was making around 2014 to 2016, from a project management and customer service role in IT into data analysis. I was really also getting into Excel at that time, and cutting my teeth on SQL. I mean, this is before Power BI had come on my radar. So my all-action Tinder dating dovetailed with my transition into a fledgling data manager and analyst. And I talk about the two of them among my friends and among my work colleagues. And what I and them would really found fascinating about Tinder, the use of the app and the dating, was the contrast between how many people you'd match with by a right swipe versus who'd all stay on your account like this history log, versus how many of those people you'd actually meet with and connect with and have a good date with. And a kind of a rough idea in my head of crystallized of measuring this in some way and finding out what the ratio of matches and right swipes I'd need for a meaningful connection with someone. So the data and dating was starting to kind of like crystallize in my head as two things which weren't entirely unrelated to each other. And a third source of inspiration for me at this time, as I was building steam in my data career, was the infographic designer David McCandless, who's published Information is Beautiful and Knowledge is Beautiful, and they're both books full of infographics which are impeccably designed and tell stories about a wide variety of different facets of life. So, and I put four of my favorites on there. The top left is the $1 billion-ogram, which is blocks with the size indicating big expenditure figures of public money or corporate money. So a huge purple block in the top right corner indicating the cost of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars of last decades, and in proportion the pink rectangle below relating to medicine and Medicare spending in America, and then smaller blocks for, say, the size of the cost of the NHS in Britain. And then on the top right, you've got an infographic on popularity of dogs as pets, measuring their popularity against their intelligence. In the bottom left, he did an infographic on called Mountains Out of Molehills, which is an area charts of media inflamed public fear. And the bigger the spike, the more the media attention it got. And actually, the biggest ones are global health pandemics, so SARS, bird flu, and the Zika virus. And I've cropped off Ebola of 2014, which was absolutely enormous. And probably, I think that's a very prescient for this time infographic. I wonder what the the spike for coronavirus would look like. But the really interesting one I'll talk for this talk was the one in the bottom right hand corner, horoscoped, which was a horoscope that was it looks like it's a kind of a dartboard with each segment showing a star sign, and within this within each segment you get the most common words used in newspaper and online horoscopes for each star sign. So and what I really liked about this was David McCandless's process for building this that he describes in talks that he gives. He said that he just wanted to know, do horoscopes all just say the same thing across all the star signs? And then he described the process that he went through. So he hired he worked with a developer to screen scrape data from the Yahoo horoscopes database, then ran some more Python and tokenized all the words to get the single words and counts of how often they occurred. And then he did a word frequency analysis and built the dartboard looking visual, and you can see it answered the question for him. It shows that most horoscopes do say better, life, sure, and feel quite often. So they obviously just rotate different cryptic messages around each horoscope until for eternity. And Dave McCandless said that he just wanted to know this, and he says he was just playing around with data, and which is why that's the title of my slide. And that inspired me as well. I like the idea of playing around with data and using something that you find fascinating and using that as a motivation to try your hands at each stage of the data gathering, merging, manipulation, and visualization process. So my newfound interest in Tinder dating, my beginnings as a data career, and getting David McCandless's books and watching his talks and seeing what he was doing, brought home to me how much data skill you could acquire by playing around with it. And my equivalent of David McCandless's curiosity about horoscopes was my curiosity about dating. So I kind of set it. So I set about doing something about it. I was like, yeah, well, why don't I make my log history of matches from Tinder and the dates I'm going on as a result into some form of data structure. So I got going. I suppose a disclaimer that I'd make at this point is that I was never interested in measuring the attractiveness of the people that I was going on dates with, or comparing them with each other. I'm not giving dating tips out here. What I'm primarily interested in measuring, and always was how many possible facets of the dating experience and the dating app usage experience could be made into independent variables to measure the empirical success of the date from my and the person I was dating's perspective. And I was wanting to measure, did location matter, time of day, time of week, slight differences in age between us, contrasts in political views. That's come up quite a lot, I think. Different heights. I don't know if even my own ineptitude at dating and measuring how I choose to dress and whether I was in shape or not. I was really interested primarily in how all of those mix in and contribute to a date being successful or not. And a date being successful, the definition of that would be, do we both like each other to arrange a next date? And I wanted to see if I can model the perfect path to dating success based on collecting as many independent variables in a structured data way. So I started structuring the data I played with, and I started out working in MySQL because it was open source, and I'd been on a MySQL course, and this is the first build that I did. I actually built the first one in a Microsoft Access database, and then migrated it over to MySQL. So I've got a lot of legacy URNs. But this image here is the tables and the columns and the date types that I have in that you get a display of in MySQL Workbench, which is my SQL Server Management Studio for MySQL, basically. So the top table was the at matches. So it was a log of each time I matched with someone on Tinder, and then later Bumble and Happen. And I have, obviously, you have to have an ID column if you run it, if you're a serious database manager. I was adding the name of the person that I matched with, which gives you their age. The result was just a simple encoding of nothing happened. We talked, but we didn't go for a date, and then we went for a date. URL, that's in 2016, I think a freelance developer managed to create a web interface version of Tinder, which was promptly shut down. So I was able to get a kind of a page link for each person that I'd matched with. And then open or date was if I sent them a message, the first message that I sent them. And the date that I did it, and that will come in handy later. The dates table was a log history of each date that I went on. So what that had was an ID column, primary keys, very keen on them. The venue where it was, the area I've been dating. I live in London, so basically that's a London borough. The activity, so did we do drinks, cinema, meal or walk, or anything else? The stage, it's a very important column. Was it a first date, a second date, a third date, fourth date? Weekday, what day of the week? Time frame, breakfast, evening, afternoon, year, months, obviously. And then source ID and type is, did we meet on Tinder, Bumble, Happen, whatever. And then parent outcome was the top, was basically top level, positive or negative. Did we have another date after that? And there are tons more. There's her hair color, my dress style, her job, my I'll come on to GDPR later actually. My age versus her age, differences in political views, and so that was the structure of the data that I had. Each date was an event. And each match was an event, and that'd be important to know with the when I describe some of the Power BI modeling later. So, and what I'd do is I had a three-part method of maintaining it, and basically this is my analytics process. I'd capture the data, store and query it, and analyze and visualize it. And in the early days, I would capture it using a Microsoft Access web form that I connected up to the MySQL database. Storage, obviously I'd store it and I'd query it from MySQL Workbench, and it was stored in MySQL. And I was doing all my analytics and visuals in Excel to start with. And some of the early work that I did in Excel is here on it. So I had I wanted to, as I mentioned before, I wanted to work out the attrition between people I'd matched with and people I'd gone on dates with, and people I'd enjoyed the dates with and then enjoyed the dates with me. So this is a simple clunky union SQL query to get the table below, which shows that I think this is 2015 to 2016. I've matched 384 people, 101 I attempted chat up an opening message on 100. roughly 100. That had meant I'd gone on 11 dates, and 4 of them we both enjoyed. And new in 2016, Excel was the funnel chart, and it looks this looks very much like an upside down spinning plate on at a circus, and you can see a fairly depressing attrition between matches and successful dates. But this is of course missing a crucial fifth measure, which is how many right swipes do I need to get this level of dates. And that would be, and the calculation for that would be how many, for every match that I got, how many times would I have to swipe right. So I did 4 days of experimenting to kind of like get a daily average, and it was 53 swipes per match. And so I plugged that into my table as an estimate. So I had 20,000 right swipes for 384 matches, and that makes the funnel chart look even more depressing. The attrition rate from 20,000 to 19,000 to 4 is actually 0.02%. And yeah, you can that's shown here very clearly on the funnel chart. But you can show it in an even more I suppose amusing way. I find it amusing because of my my interest in the underground. So I calculate that 0.02% as a difference, as a ratio, is like saying that my 4 successful dates were the distance from Clapham North and Clapham South tube stations in South London. They're 2 adjacent stations, and so if you consider that as the 4 successful dates, the 19,000 right swipes in comparison to that is the diameter of planet Earth. So that's that's pretty that's you do what you have to do, don't you? Quite a long journey. And the second insight that I wanted and derived in my early days from pre-Power BI days from my dating database was I wanted to model, as I said at the beginning, my path to a successful Tinder date using all of the as many input variables as possible from my dating and app matching table. So I would use message I'd sent, what I looked like, was I in shape, was she left leaning, was I right leaning, was she what was her occupation, where did we do the dating, when. So I set about running this analysis and defining, by the way, my metric of successful date as, I'm counting first dates only here. I'm saying that a successful date is a first date which leads to a second date. I'm discounting second dates which leads to third, because then you've already established a bit of a personal collection by then. So your initial choices and initial lines may be less influential as you get further down the dating process. I hate to sound like an engineer there. So what was my model path to a successful first date? Had to do a couple more calculations here. Here's some SQL to calculate our difference in age based on my age, and here's some VBA on the right, which I was quite keen on in my early days to run counts of the amount of emoticons that I was using in my opening chat up line messages. So here we go. So my model path to a successful date was a date in a gastropub in London Bridge on a Thursday evening with a doctor or Accenture consultant with blonde hair who's the same age as me or 1 year younger. Being in good shape for me wasn't vital, but it was vital that I dressed smart casual. I had to have a cute or ironic photo with a sepia glow as the lead Tinder profile picture. That was the most successful one. I'm on the right again. And I had to use a punchy opening chat up line. Average length for a successful date was 17 words that does contain emoticons or questions. And the I suppose you want to make it contain emoticons to show a cute side, and you want to make it contain questions so that she has something to respond to. So I suppose the data bears some resemblance to to my intuition, which is always good. that was where it got to in 2017 as I was getting into Power BI. And for the GDPR question, yes, I did, along with anyone working in data, was hit like a ton of bricks by the watershed moment in 2018 of GDPR. I did do an audit of my little project and considered whether I had consent or significant interest for the data subject for me to store certain bits of information about the data on my database. I did anonymize or pseudo-anonymize it, and have that. I think my security preparations and measures are good enough. So I anonymized my data and decided that I hadn't obtained consent from the people I was going on dates with to store and analyze the data. So I didn't have a consent defense, and I certainly didn't have a significant interest defense for their part either, because I couldn't really claim that it's in their significant interest being on a date with me that I continue to store data about them to analyze and to do talks on here. So what I did, I pseudo-anonymized the existing data that I had, and basically stopped running this in 2018 after GDPR, because what I didn't want to do was start new dates that I was going on by asking them to fill out a consent form for being on my dating database. I don't think the dates would have gone well had I kept doing that, and I certainly didn't want to ring up all the previous dates, good or bad, that I'd been on, asking them for consent to continue to maintain data about them on their database. That would have been probably would have gone down like a ton of bricks as well. So GDPR stopped the further collection of data on my dating base. But by then, what I felt I had after all this, the rows of data on Tinder app usage and dates that I've been on, I felt like I had my own mini version of the Microsoft AdventureWorks database. I felt like I was a proper little ninja doing this, and I had it was almost better than AdventureWorks actually, because it was nowhere near as sophisticated with its primary key, foreign key, and data structures and volume of data, but it was something that really interested me and was directly relevant to my life and my experience. And when you have a data set like that, it is easier and more fun to analyze and motivates you further to try new stuff. And the new stuff that I wanted to try in 2017 was Power BI, which was came onto my radar actually at the end of a advanced Excel VBA course that I went on, when the guy who'd been teaching us about user forms and loop logic and cell referencing in VBA passionately for 3 days just turned around at the end and said, oh, by the way, the latest, the app that you really want to be learned for the next few years is going to be Microsoft Power BI if you're into all this stuff. So I did that, and I went on a discovered Power BI for my work and for my own interest, and I started by going on an intro to Power BI course in London in 2017, which was really good, but I felt quite ambivalent towards the sample data we were using in the afternoon to do an exercise. It was, I think it was global coffee sales, and I was kind of taking notes, mildly interested in the global coffee sales and building the bullet chart from that, but I kind of had a bit of a light bulb moment as I was prattling about at the back. I realised that actually, well, I've got a perfectly good database of my own on that I can access. Why don't I try running that through Power Query, loading it into Power BI, and coming up with a few first visuals. So I did that, and luckily Power BI in 2017 had a connector for MySQL data. So I started the dating dashboard, and quickly discovered that kind of Power BI was felt a bit like Excel on steroids, with the speed of transformations and the visualizations that you could do compared with how long it took to build slick visuals using the charting options in Excel. And after 2 years, I've been using Power BI for that long in work and trying new tricks out on my data database. And I think Power BI is Excel on steroids, because it fundamentally, Power BI has grown a hell of a lot over the last 2 years by bringing in machine learning capability, texture analysis. It's got a whole suite of ETL functionality with data flows, and it now links up very well to Power Apps. Will enable people actually to write data back to source databases and be interactive and useful like apps. But it's still true to its original concept and purpose, which is a visualization and BI tool. And the way it builds on Excel as a visualization and BI tool, I think, is through the imaginative and varied range of visuals that it offers beyond conventional line charts, pie charts, and bar charts. It gives you, and the best kept secrets of these are within app source custom visuals or custom visuals that you get from the marketplace. And I'm going to the next bit of my talk is going to be about making what you can do with Power BI and how I managed to do it with my data database with app source custom visuals, and how they can really how you can deploy that into your jobs and into commercial reports to really make business reporting that much more fun for people and that much more kind of like slick and magazine level gloss. And so I'm just going to switch over now to my hang on. Seem to have lost. That's better, right? That was almost a Blue Peter moment. So the next screen that you should all see is Power BI. If anyone can't see a screen on your screen called Dating Tree Map, please do shout at me in the chat. This is what I managed to do in the first afternoon of that fateful Intro to Power BI course that I did in 2017. It was basically a simple tree map of activity with area of London as the second level of detail. This is kind of like when I fell in love with Power BI. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool, and I can slice it by stage date. I can see, well, how many first dates only. What am I doing on just my first dates? And it's got the model in there for you, and it should just dynamically update. And then what am I doing? So mainly drinks on the first date, couple of romantic walks, a bit of coffee. And these are only, and I can also filter it by good first dates and bad first dates, and kind of like good third dates and bad dates. And this is when the kind of like the capability. So only 2 bad third dates. So I've usually got dating down to a T by the third day, at least 1 meal, 1 bad coffee. But this is actually scratching the surface of Power BI. So and it goes, and the best stuff, as I've been saying, is in the custom visuals. And just as a caveat on the custom visuals, you need a Power BI account to access them. So you would get the custom visuals by clicking on the visualization pane, clicking the 3 dots, and it will give you get more visuals, and then it will give you a pop-up box with a kind of a full marketplace of different visuals that you can use. To access this, you need to be I'm logged into I actually have a Power BI account from my blog email domain, ukavidata.com. You will either need to use your business email or have a company domain to access it. I don't think you can get it with a Gmail or a Hotmail. Having said that, I'll be sharing the slides for this talk, and I will give a Microsoft Power BI link explaining how you can access the custom visuals on a trial basis. And they're well worth playing around with. So, but bullet charts, word clouds, infographic designers, you get a whole host of differently customizable maps from the 2 map options you get in standard Power BI visuals. You can get different gauges, different hierarchical slices, proper histogram charts, and these are the things which really elevate the business dashboards and get business users within companies using them. And I'm going to focus on 3 now, which lend themselves to my dating dashboard. The first one I'm going to talk through is something called a Sankey flow diagram. I don't know. In essence, the Sankey flow diagram shows stages. So the Sankey flow diagrams are great for things like process automation or process efficiency analysis. I used to work in mail and print, we would basically print invoices and commercial documents for people, mass mail them and send them, and we'd have to handle the printing, the mass mailing, and the distribution. And there'd be color printing, black and white printing, big automated folding machines versus smaller folding machines. A Sankey diagram, which I totally think you should see now, would be able to show that well. So if you wanted to show how many defective products or documents come out at each stage and at each bit of each stage, so the printing stage, you have big color printer or Xerox black and white, and how many of those get through to the mass mailing machine and how many get through to different funnels in the distribution stage. I'm also thinking here you could do like customer journey, so how many people come in via the website or LinkedIn promotion or flyers, and how many of them buy specific products, and how many of those that bought that specific product left a positive review, for instance. And I use the principle of the Sankey diagram on my dating, and what I'm showing here is date, stage, and activity, and how the attrition happens. So I get to kind of 2, 8th, and 9th dates from 14, 15, 16 first dates. I've got some filters on this, and so it shows that most of my first dates are drinks with one impressive view plus drink. I was feeling particularly adventurous one day. I decided to take a girl to the Shard in London on a first date to prove what a player I was. But mostly drinks. Then most of my drinks flow into a second date of more drinks, but some of them to a second date of a meal. And then you can see most of mine, a lot of the time, the connection breaks down after date 2, sadly. But then if my second date's a drink, chances are it'll be more drinks or a film. If my second date's a meal, it'll be another film. So I'm doing a lot of films on my third date. Then a lot of mostly meals on the 4th date, and then more going out for dinner more and more. And then as you get kind of like further down the dating funnel, you're basically going for dinner most times, and then you stop recording because you like to think that it stops becoming the dating process and you're actually in a relationship. But the way to set up, and how did I set this up? DAX is the answer. Custom visuals in general, and particularly the Sankey diagram, rewards playing with DAX and getting used to it. And what you need for a Sankey diagram is you need a source. So if you just turn your minds to the visualizations pane here on the mid right, you need a source, a destination, and a weight. And the source is the start. It is the source, first date, and the destination is second date. But the source could also be second date, and the destination could be third date. third and fourth and fifth. And the weight just has to be a standard measure of count, value, or sum. So I'm just counting the amount of dates I've got on, or in this case, the amount of people I've dated. And as I was mentioning earlier, my model has each date in the dating table as a row with its own ID, with the stage and with the person. So what I need on each row is the next ID, the next row ID for that, for the next stage for the same person. So for the identifier, and I'll show you how I do that in DAX. So my source is stage and activity. That's a calculated column in my dates table. I called it the grid because all database structures have fancy techy names. So stage and activity is this calculated column here. I'm just going to bring the DAX up. So I'm just going to highlight it for you there. It's dates. It's basically concatenating stage 1, 2, 3, 4 with activity, what we did, drinks, impressive view, meal, whatever. And you can see that in the labels, stage and activity. So then my destination is always next stage and activity. How did I get that? It's here. So if I just highlight the calculated column for that, what I'm doing is I'm looking up that stage and activity calculated column, which is always going to be a number plus an activity. I'm looking it up on that row's ID and try to match the next. So the row ID is a primary key, so it can't duplicate. Trying to match the row ID corresponding to the next date with the same person, and the next date ID is another calculated column, which is this. So a lot of helper columns here. What I'm doing with this is basically finding the smallest, finding the ID where it's the same person. UI is unique identified because I've anonymized my data into a hash key. And basically in DAX, a very useful but completely misnamed function is called the earlier function, which basically says, give me, filter the table to be all values which corresponds to this specific value. So basically, earlier is very important for doing calculated columns. So I'm getting get me the ID where it's the same person using so person equals earlier person, and where the stage is greater than the stage we're looking at now. So I'm getting the minimum ID. So I'm getting the smallest ID where it's the same person and the stage is higher. And if it's the smallest where the stage is higher, it's the next stage. And that's returning the row ID. So once I've got the row ID of the next stage for the same person on the same row, I then have a this and a next on the same row. So then I can get stage and activity and next stage and activity, and just measure that by the amount of dates that have each combination of this and next, and that gives you the Sankey diagram. The combination of number of date stage plus drinks makes the Sankey diagram work with only 2 columns, but give you however many stages you've got. It might take a couple of repeats to took a couple of repeats for me and a couple of videos watched to get my head around that. But once you do, it's really powerful. You can really get a lot of insight from just essentially just adding 2 more columns to your model. But a caveat with the Sankey diagrams is that you can't custom control the colors. Sankey diagrams, I think, they were designed with just a 2-stage, maximum 3-stage process flow in mind. So customer journey, say for instance. I'd rather manipulated the purpose of the Sankey diagram to make it a 9-stage, so I can't really control what colours there are, which is frustrating, but it's still insightful. And the Sankey diagram, that gives you insight, and that you can use that with a specific purpose in mind commercially for customer journey or for process efficiency analysis. I've used it on dating. The next custom visual which I found which I really like is something called a waffle chart. Don't know if you're familiar with a waffle chart, but it's basically a more stylish version of a bar chart, which shows the weight of each category. So in my case, hair color of the person that I was going on, of the people I've been on dates with, as a proportion of the whole. So I've gone on dates with 44% of brunettes, 37% have been blondes, and then 20% have been ginger. And it shows, you could just use a bar chart for these and have you'd have the biggest bar for the longest bar for brunette, the middle bar for blonde, and the shortest bar for ginger. But this shows it in a 10 by 10 grid of circles, which is the waffle. And then the jam on the waffle is the percentage that it fills up. So 44%, you get 44 brown circles. And this is quite a fairly simple DAX, but you need to bear something in mind with the maximum measure. What you need is to run this as your category data. So in this case, it's their hair color. You need your measure of some value or count, so number of dates I've been on, and you need a maximum measure to tell the waffle chart to run it as a out of 100%. If you don't do that, you get the wrong numbers, which they don't really tell you, and I think and is at the very least counterintuitive, but you just need to work it out by actually using a waffle chart. And what I've got here is the numbers in a table next to me. And a good tip for using custom visuals and verifying that the data is accurate, which you should always do first, is basically to just run your custom visual alongside a table to make sure it's showing the same numbers as your table. And say if I take my measure of maximum off, I get different numbers to the actual ones. So to fix that, what you need as your measure of maximum, which I'm going to load in now, conscious of time, is an all measure. So if I just highlight the DAX for that, an all measure is basically just using all selected. So the way Power BI and DAX modeling works is something called row and filter context. When you select your basic measure of dates, so that's just count of date, number of dates is basically just count rows. It's if you put that count rows as just a card, it will give you the number of the whole rows in the database. When you put that as the values to a category, it then uses the category to provide 3 separate versions of that measure for each of the 3 categories that I have, or you may have more than one. So it will split. So because I have hair color as the category, it will give me the count rows for each of that category. What I need for the waffle chart to make it show percentages correctly out of all the data that I've been on is this, my maximum measure. So all selected basically says calculate count rows, but ignore any splits by category that are on that particular visual. So give me all the count rows, even if it's got even if the visual's trying to split it by a category. And all selected is basically just a switch on all to say consider any slicers that you have on that visual. And I do want to have a slicer. I have good dates and bad dates, so that I can see how many dates that went well I've been on with each hair colour category to see most of my successful dates are actually with ladies of the fair hair hair colour. But as I was actually preparing for this talk and playing around with this, I was interested in, well, if you look at the visualization pane and the category and the data that it asks for, there's a variable here, paths. I was interested, well, what does paths do? And paths allows you to customize your circles into a different shape to make it more relatable to the subject matter you're visualizing. So I was like, yeah, let's give that a go. And what you need for paths is you need a calculated column which has the code of an SVG path. An SVG is a scalable vector graphic. If I just a scalable vector graphic is basically an embedded bit of HTML and CSS code that you use for web design, which has a property called the D property. And at the end of my talk, I'll be on the kind of it will have a resources slide, and it will have a publicly available library of SVG paths of common icons. So what I did was I was like, well, I want to see the female symbol on my dates by hair color waffle chart. So what you need is like I said, you need your calculated column. So if you look in the fields on the far right, SVG temp is my calculated column. I always start by calling it temp just in case it turns out not to be wrong. And this, I'm highlighting it now, is basically just a string, and the string is it's the D property in the code for an SVG path. And I'm just conscious of time, but I'm just going to show you. I wonder if I can get the screen share working properly. Again, stop share, new share. Here we go. I'm going to show you this. What you should see now is participants. Just going to make sure I can see the chat. Yeah, good. There we go. What you should see now is a website, Orion, and this will give you some free icons. So the up arrow icon, and it gives you this is in the resources, by the way. It gives you a pen, and the inline SVG gives you the code which makes that icon. And the property here is this one. It's the D property. So that's the D property. That's the SVG code for just an upward arrow, for a hollow upward arrow. So if I go back to my my Power BI. There we go. So you should see the Power BI. So this long bit of code is for, and I'll show you now. I'll show you what that does. If I just move this calculated column, which is an SVG path, into my paths. One sec. What that will do is it will render basically an SVG symbol into your waffle chart grid. So that, and say if you're doing visualizing car sales, you can use cars, or construction, you could use the image of a tower or something like that. It just this on something like this on a corporate report or on a business dashboard is just a lot more interesting and fun way to display top level basic metrics than say just a bar chart with three Excel default blue bars of different sizes. very conscious of time now, but quickly, the third visualization that the third app source custom visualization that Power BI offers, which I really like, is a bit of a crowd pleaser, frivolous fun. It's don't know if anyone's seen the Power BI Enlighten Aquarium shows categories based on their prominence in your data set. So value counts, based as funny fish floating around in an aquarium. So what I'm showing here is my just show it is my I hope everyone could see the see this batch.
You can see the fish swimming, yeah.
It's showing good. It's the amount of how many dates have I been on people with different names. So I've been on a lot of dates with Emma, with Rebecca, and with Emily, but say less so much with Polly, less with Chloe. And actually, I think there's one on here with I was checking last night. There's one on here with the name Noel. So obviously, I've got a slight data quality issue that I need to address. You could apply this to basically to sales. How many which business units are selling most, and which are the bigger fish? And it's and actually, if you with a slight bit of DAX, to do this, because I'm doing count rows which is positive, so I actually switched it to be negative. If you show negative numbers on an enlightened fish aquarium, and I managed to get my dashboard to show negative numbers for the unsuccessful days, what the enlightened aquarium will do is it will flip the fish up and make them float to the top like dead fish, which is a rather fun property. So if you've got business using units in your business making a loss, they would float to the top, while others would just swim around in a living state. So that's again something that you can have as the opening state for, say, your sales dashboard. And the benefits of that, I'm just going to switch back to wrap up now. So you should see Power BI now. That's one of the three takeaways of the talk is custom visuals and what they can do. Actually, the fact that they're there for you to use, just to beef up the level of your visuals within where you work. The takeaway I want to give is that all of these custom visuals, I've shown you them, but you need to work out what their quirks are and what they don't do for you out of the box, and what you might need DAX for. And the way to do that is a purpose that drives your learning. For me, that purpose was was my own dating data, because I found it interesting, and I found data interesting and structuring data interesting. So I managed to combine the two to make an analyzable data set for myself. And I still use that. If I'm curious about the way something works on Power BI, or need to do something for work, I will test it out on my dating dashboard at home. And you need to do that with DAX and Power BI. They're not things that you can passively learn through YouTube videos, though there are brilliant resources for them. You need to practice it. Takeaway 2 is that a database of your dating history may not get you a girlfriend. So if anyone's been hoping for dating tips from me this morning, sorry if you're disappointed. But takeaway 3 is these custom visuals. They reward patience, practice, and good intermediate level DAX, and just being curious about them. And they're a great way to allow you as a business to keep ownership of your analytics. What I'd say is there's a lot of third-party there's a lot of people saying they offer custom visuals for you on a subscription basis. So for instance, Zebra BI, for instance, they do fantastic work, but you'll have to sign up for a license and then sign up for premium license to get the good stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? And that involves director level sign off. It involves kind of like waiting people. These custom visuals are there for you as a free resource, and they enable you to keep control of your reporting and make it fun and interesting. So I think just to get to make the best out of Power BI, use custom visuals and use your own data to play around with them, and you'll be surprised at the results. That's kind of everything for my talk. These are the resources that have helped me, so I'll leave this as the state. So this will be shared with the attendees. But these are all the meetup groups that I attend, my favourite YouTube resources, and of course, Dave McCandless, how to sign up to Power BI service and how to use the scalable vector graphics. So I'll kind of stop now. I think I've run over just a tad, but Will, have we got time for a few questions?
We have got a time for a few questions if there is anything. So far, there's been some comments. There was one moment in between saying this approach treats it like a binomial distribution. Is it not more a Poisson distribution?
This approach treats it like a binomial distribution. I think, yeah, it is more. It's definitely not a binomial distribution. It is more of a Poisson distribution. A binomial distribution means you need like a fixed count. It has to be out of 100. It has to be out of that. This is evolving, so it really can't be. But I'm not. I haven't been that statistical. That I haven't analysed this with that level of statistics in mind. This is more. I'm a very much domain expertise analyst rather than a statistical analysis. So you're probably just pulling me well out of my comfort zone with that question. But
no problem.
I tell you what, I will write a blog on that.
Okay.
Because that's fascinating that someone thought that someone got there. So I'll consider that further and see if I can build answer Mr. Bryant's question in a more formal way. But thanks very much. That's really I've never had that that reaction before. It's great.
So two more open questions here. Do you have any insight on maintaining custom visuals? I've heard they are frequently updated and might change in the user experience. And have you come across any visuals that actually cost money, and how do they compare to free ones?
Yes, they do. They will. Some custom visuals will change in the interface, and you just have to go with Power BI certified ones. That would be my stock answer. And I've picked the 3 out that I've picked because in the year that I've been using them, they've always been reliable for me. But yes, I would stress that there are quirks on the standard key diagram. For instance, you can't customize the colors. And then what was the second bit of that question? It was so
you've done the comparison to the free ones and versus the cost, but rather like how do you maintain them? So if you've taken some free resources, how do you keep those up to date if there is an update for them?
My short answer to that would be I have you kind of just have to doesn't sound very impressive.
Yeah, manually check them basically. Right.
Yeah, you have to check them, and that is the slight pitfall. But you have to check. You should be in a habit of checking the stats that come out of your Power BI reporting anyway, and just be prepared to. I mean, and as a data analyst and BI developer, you should expect for people to question your numbers anyway. It's you should expect for your for the content of your dashboard to be questions, and you should have checks in place to see that the numbers are still valid, and that the dashboards are still showing what they should be. Whether that's spot checking, that's the price you may have to pay.
Sure. Okay. What would be your most favorite custom visual to use in a business context?
Oh, good question. I think it's the waffle chart. Actually, I think the Sankey diagram is the colours can be a bit annoying for people, and because you can't. It would be great on a Sankey diagram. We'll just show if it would be great if the drinks were always green, or I could customize it to purple, and the meal was always red. But you can see they switch that because they're only really the developers of the Sankey diagram only considered that then people would use it for 2 stages, and that the values in each stage would be completely different. Which is, I mean, I'd love for Power BI or the developer of that to add that as a customizable field and formatting option of a Sankey diagram. So for now, it's the waffle chart.
Okay.
Because because you can customize the image, and you don't need to show a particularly hard statistical concept or measure. It's just a really fun and easy way to make simple measures of size look much more interesting and relevant to your company or subject matter. And I love the name as well. It's making me hungry.
Final question in the Q&A. If I want to see about a certain product, so this is a little bit more about an abstract question, I would guess.
Yeah.
If I want to see about a certain product's status changes over a period of time, which graph would you recommend using?
Okay. If I want to see a certain product about its status changes, I think you would use the Sankey diagram for that, actually. And what you would have to have, you could use a decomposition. You play around with a decomposition tree. They're similar to Sankey diagrams, but you have to manually expand them, I think. But out of the 3 I've done, I would use a Sankey diagram to show the different stages, and you'd structure it by having product, start stage, end stage, and for each product you have a row for each stage transition. So if it's product X and it goes from stage 1 to stage 6, in your model you need product X source, you need product X stage 1, stage 2, product X stage 2, stage 3, product X stage 3, stage 4, and so on. And you could have that behind a simple table. You would make your Sankey diagram a drill through page. So your main one would be a much more interesting version of this table, but you could right click on your product and then drill through, and then your drill through page would be, I would make that the Sankey diagram of that specific product.